All right, I'd like to call the Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, May 10th to order. Please call the roll.
No, they said it was.
Alderman Strelchuk.
Here.
Alderman Bushy.
Here.
Alderman Meyer.
Here.
Alderman Hancher.
Here.
Alderman Garrow.
Here.
Alderman Parrish.
Here.
Alderman Schneider. Here. Mayor Nervin.
Here. We're all here, except for my vacancy, which we'll get to in a minute. First up, approval of the meeting minutes from April 12th.
Move approval.
Second. Any questions, comments, corrections? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Just in case the reports go long, I'd like to take up suspend the rules. If someone would give me a motion and take up the Aldermanic District 8 vacancy first, and then we'll get to the rest of the agenda.
Okay, I'll move to second.
So, motion and a second. All those in favor of suspending the rules, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, we're going to take up that item. Is there a quick staff report, or is this pretty straightforward? Our past practice has been, is Brian going to give us a little intro here?
Sure, I can just very quickly. Past practice here in Mequon has been historically to make an appointment. That appointment, in my tenure in the 8 years or so that I've been here, has actually been slightly different in various circumstances. But really, the options that you have would be you could make the appointment either through the end of the term, or you can make the appointment until a special election would be held. The end of the term in this case would be not this coming spring, so a year from now in essence, but 2 years from now. So you could either appoint through the end of the term, or you could appoint to a special election. My recommendation as to the timing of that special election would be either to time it in conjunction with the November election this fall, or to do it in conjunction with the regular election in spring. And in either case, then, if you had it in November or next spring, the individual would then run again the following spring at the end of the term. So, if that makes sense.
Alderman Parrish, who knows about these things personally?
Yes, I'm having some flashbacks to what y'all put me through. And I appreciate your legal analysis. I'm not sure what that means in terms of what I'm about to say, but just it was a great opportunity to be put on when I was, but to have to be appointed, run for a special election, and then run for a brand new term all within like a year and a half, it's not fair to the position itself necessarily. But I'm super grateful, so don't hear me wrong. And so I don't know what that means in terms of this timeline. And I mean, I definitely think that district needs representation. So
it does. And I think the message from the city attorney is we get to pick what we want to do. So if we want to propose appointment and let it run until the end of would have been the end of my normal term, that is an option, or we can impose a special election at some point in between.
And for what it's worth, I mean, those are the concerns that, when we hear that type of discussion, both previously here and in other communities, is it fair to have that person run once right away and then again, basically the immediately following year? The flip side of it, the argument is that it's ultimately the people of that district who should be selecting, not the full community. So those are the two arguments traditionally that we hear on either side.
Alderman Meyer was first.
Well, I kind of lean to the fact of having not having a special election, but having it in the November election for it, just because of the fact of what you just stated. The second part of it, the fact for the residents, they're not having an elected official represent them, and the person that we may choose may not be the person that they want. So I think with having people, number one, it's bad not having them having a representative at all. But secondly, is that if you had somebody that they didn't want for some God-given reason, that'd just be one step below not being right for it.
Alderman Strelchuk.
Also noting that Alderman Parrish isn't the only one that's ridden in this rodeo. You know, I had the similar situation. I think the things that are important to me is, like, you know, number one, we don't want to leave a seat vacant until an election. So for me, an appointment is critical, just so those people in that district have a voice that they can reach out to, especially, you know, with the highway being worked on at this time. You know, they're going to have questions, concerns, and need a representative that's their own. Secondly, I'll mirror what Alderman Meyer stated, that, you know, I like to, as soon as possible, well, without extra financial burden on the city and then therefore the taxpayer, have an opportunity for the people to express their voice, to bring in whomever they see as the best fit for the office to represent them. So I too would also be in favor of a November election, assuming that those polling stations would be set up already.
Any other feedback from the group? Questions? Alderman Parrish.
So that would be about 5 months of this person serving. I guess being consistent with my other comments, I'm okay with it being in the April election. I think having a person serve a year, I mean, it takes months just to understand what you're doing. So, and then they'll be up for election all of a sudden. So it takes a lot of time for staff to orientate the person. I don't know if they want to speak to that, but it's a lot of resources too. So I'm okay with it being a full year or up to a full year, as long as it's before that April election.
I think to Alderman Parrish's point, by the time we collect applicants and interview them and install someone,
Train them.
we're a month or at least a month closer, probably 2 months closer to that November election anyway. Then you're serving for 3 months and you're already campaigning the day you start.
Yeah.
The day you start, that's a little rushed perhaps.
I'd be fine with the April then, moving into April.
What did your people say? What have they said? Has anybody said anything to you?
No, no one said anything to me.
Okay.
But I think that is what we did to you. I think, wasn't it? It was a year, wasn't?
Yeah, I
It wasn't
definitely
a couple
had more
months, it was
than 4 months to serve before I had to think about running. So that was nice.
I think the city clerk has something important to add.
Keep in mind, if we have 3 or more that choose to run in November, that we would have a primary in August. So that would come pretty quickly.
Another excellent point. Alderman Boucher.
I think Alderman Parrish has actually run more often than I have because of that, but I'm actually, because of the second point of the representation of the residents, and that we're setting up a holding spot, and that individual, whoever it is, kind of has a leg up on other candidates. I am more inclined towards a November election.
Alderman Stralchek.
If the motion comes forward for an April and it gets a second and we vote on it, I'll vote in favor of it in the spirit of having an effective person that's had a little, we'll keep on the rodeo theme, has a little saddle time in the office and is able to, you know, effectively discharge said duties for those residents. But, you know, again, I still do prefer the November election. Again, you know, I just don't, everyone else in the community has elected us, and now we're going to elect, you know, we're going to appoint somebody of our choosing to that district based on, you know, how the interview went and how we feel for that. I like the voice of the people, but in the aspect of balancing effectiveness, I'm okay going either way.
So is there a motion? We have to decide if we're going to appoint someone, and then if we appoint someone, when will the next election be?
Would you like 2 motions or 1?
I'll take it in any form.
I'll make a motion to appoint somebody.
I second.
So we're going to split it.
Yeah.
Might as well.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to move forward with the appointment process.
Right.
So on that question, please call the roll.
second. Did you get a second on that?
I think we got a second.
Okay, sorry.
Alderman Strelchuk,
Aye.
Alderman Bushy,
Aye.
Alderman Meyer,
Aye.
Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Garrow,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Alderman Schneider,
Aye.
and Mayor Nervin.
Aye. So that much is decided. Now the next step is special election in November, which is coming up pretty quick, or April, or go with the full term. Is there a motion on that point?
Sounds like we have consensus on 2, right? I'd make a motion for November.
Second.
Motion and a second on November. Let's call the roll on that.
Alderman Bushy,
Aye.
Alderman Meyer,
Aye.
Alderman Hancher,
No.
Alderman Garrow,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Alderman Schneider,
Aye.
Mayor Nervin,
No.
and Alderman Strelchuk.
Aye.
That's 6-3 because we have one deemed no.
That's right. So it's going to be appointment with election right away in November. All right, trial by fire it is. That's okay. We've made a decision. Now on with the rest of the.
A question. Do we still have to decide whether or not that runs off the full term then? For the special election, or is that automatic?
Special election would be for
Not a
the
special
the
election.
remainder of the
It's
term.
going to be running out the term, okay.
right. We should probably just confirm I know the clerk had a timeline that was attached to the memo as well. Just kind of confirming with the council that time frame in terms of making that initial appointment looks acceptable to everyone.
Can we just
Good
clarify
point.
what the timeline is for the process, meaning that we have to publish this in the newspaper? What is the timeline there?
Yep, I think that's, if you refer to packet page 17, it is in the packet, so it's coming up quickly. We need to, well, we have having this meeting tonight on the 10th. We need to publish it in 2 editions back to back. So that'd be the 17th and 24th of the news graphic. Letters of interest would be coming in the first week of June, and then we have a bunch of dates which we would need to pick one to meet and interview them. Those are listed there as well, and then needing to wrap this up by the next Common Council meeting, June 14th. Go ahead, Mr. Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, as noted in the packet, in the timeline that the Mayor Nervin just referenced, we've included a number of dates during the first week of June where the council could conceivably schedule a special committee of the whole meeting to start early in the evening to conduct interviews with any and all applicants. And we don't know what that number will be outside of the regular committee of the whole meeting, which falls on June 14th. We have 5 weeks between tonight's meeting and the June council meeting, so that may afford the council flexibility to schedule that special committee of the whole meeting on an off night during that first full week of June. And then we would have a vote taken that evening, and then staff could prepare the resolution appointing whoever the council selects or the committee of the whole selects for formal appointment on June 14th, whereby that person would then be sworn in at the regular council meeting.
Perfect.
And if there's interest in going that route, staff would be happy to poll the council after this evening's meeting to find a date that works for most, if not all, of the council members.
I think we should move forward with that right after the meeting, like you said. All right, so we've taken care of item 4C. We'll get back on the regular agenda. We have department reports from finance. If there are any questions, there don't have to be, but if there are, we could field them now. And if there aren't, we'll get on to discussion items 4A and B. Sounds like there are no questions for the finance director, so you're off the hook. Take it away, Chief Bialk.
So back in 2017, we had a staffing study by the Matrix company. I didn't think of this until I sat down. Was it $70,000 or $35,000? I forget the cost. I should have looked that up before I came here. Do you remember? I thought it was.
If that's a question for me, Chief, I think it was 25,000 per department.
Okay. I couldn't remember. So this is a review or summary of what happened, and we're 11, 3, and 4. So we have 11 wins, 3 losses, and 4 ties. So basically, they came up with 18 recommendations. 11 of them we implemented, 3 of them we have not, and 4 we're working on right now. So that's how I got that number. So just briefly, in the packet, you have the long explanation of this, but some of the things that they recommended are things we've accomplished. They said we should continue with the first responder program, and we've done that. Established travel time benchmarks of 5 and 10 minutes for EMS calls, and we've done that. And along with that, in number 3, we report that out annually in our annual report. He said implement a leave calendar to help identify days when there's staffing shortages. We've done that. We've gone to an electronic online calendar that people fill out so we know when people are around. They said we should continue the intern program. We've done that. We're up at full staff. We have 6 interns right now. It's been very successful for us. Implementation of incentive programs for retention of personnel. After the recommendations of the FUFTI committee, last year we were able to raise some pay for individuals, so that turned out really well for us. It said to increase full-time staffing, having 3 officers working on shifts. Again, with the FUFTI committee recommendations, we hired the 3 battalion chiefs. That's been wildly successful. We should discuss sharing the services. As you know, we've done that. We've worked out the deal with Deansville. Add a fire inspector. We've done that by one of the battalion chiefs as a fire inspector. The training division should be commanded by at least a captain. We've done that. One of the battalion chiefs is in charge of training. And train and encourage staff to participate in public education events. And then, again, with the pay increase, we've been able to get more people to show up for the public education events. The things that we have not been able to do yet was improve time stamping for fire and EMS calls, make sure that they're captured so we have good solid data. We still struggle with some stuff in the CAD system to get all that information out of there properly. They suggested changing the administrative assistant from part-time to full-time because of budget constraints. We're still part-time. And the city should consider fees for fire inspections and special use permits. We have not done that yet. Things that we're in process of, it said that we should monitor development, calls for service, population, density, to identify areas to locate a new station or substations. I think in that strategic plan that we reviewed or we're going to review, that is in there, that we'll be checking into that, so that's a work in progress. We continue to work with dispatch to improve our call processing times, especially since we implemented that emergency medical dispatch. We're trying to get the times down to less than 90 seconds where somebody, from the time they make the phone call till we're dispatched. We're working on that. Continue to renovate the current stations. We're doing that, again, with the money left over, or we had the FUFTI recommended from the battalion chiefs. We use that to make some station improvements at both firehouses, so that's been well received. And to continue the current vehicle replacement program, we've done that. Again, the budget hasn't always allowed us to fund the program to its full extent. So all in all, back to my beginning, we're 11 wins, 3 losses, and 4 ties. So, any questions?
Thank you, Chief.
I have a question.
Alderwoman Schneider, sorry.
You can, either way, just don't have to correct yourself, whatever, I'll get the drift. I'm just curious about the CAD program and the timestamps. Is this more of a technological issue where folks are having trouble using, you don't have the proper technology, people are having trouble using the technology, or is it a personnel problem?
I think it's when the dispatch answers a 911 call, oftentimes if there's some incident like a car accident, we get multiple calls on it, there's a lot going on, and perhaps not every vehicle, every unit that goes in service is stamped at the right time. So it just...
So is it a dispatch function? Are they the people that are tasked with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, they are.
any way that can be improved? It doesn't sound like it, because it sounds like it's happening when there's multiple calls for the same event, and it's hard to answer all those calls and get the appropriate time to.
And with the way we operate, we send multiple units, 4 or 5 units. You know, we have an ambulance from each side of town, a first responder, a battalion chief. There's 5 vehicles all responding to an incident. It may be difficult for them to capture all those while everything's going on.
Gotcha. So there's no easy remediation for that one.
No, some departments go to a terminal inside the vehicle where the person is responsible for pushing a button that tells when they're responding, which is probably a better way of doing it. Again, that would be a cost to install that technology.
Thanks.
Alderman Parrish.
Thank you. Good question, Alderwoman Schneider. I think one request would be that for the budget season coming up here, to come up with a technological solution that might move us forward in this area, so that we could at least have the choice and we can help you accomplish solve the problem. So I'd be willing to entertain that.
Sure.
Thank you.
We'll do that.
Any other questions for the fire chief? Mr. Administrator?
Thank you, Mayor Nurbin. The fire chief did indicate that a number of the recommendations are in the process of being addressed through the proposed merger with the Village of Thiensville. I just wanted to provide the council with a quick update as to the status of that merger matter. As you will recall, the intergovernmental agreement was approved by this Common Council last month on April 12th. Since then, the Village of Thiensville has had 2 meetings. One was a public presentation back in late April to provide details to their village and residents about the proposed merger and the intergovernmental agreement that was approved here earlier in the month, as well as a committee of the whole meeting in early May to obtain testimony from residents and feedback from the village. Formal approval of the intergovernmental agreement is scheduled to be on the village board's agenda next Monday, May 16th. And pending approval of the agreement, which was recommended by the committee of the whole last week by a vote of 5-1, the operational merger will occur starting July 1st of this year. Tomorrow, the joint working group that was initially comprised based on a resolution approved by the Mequon and Thiensville governing boards back last December will be meeting to continue work on the necessary action steps that will be followed to implement the merged department, both starting July 1st and towards January 1st of next year. So while the merger is not yet official, we don't want to wait any longer than necessary to continue planning for all of the work that we know will need to be done if the merger is approved next week. After next week's meeting, pending approval by the Thiensville Village Board, the joint board, the Southern Ozaki Fire and EMS Board, which is comprised of 3 members of this body and 2 members of the Village of Thiensville, will then meet sometime late this month or in early June, schedules permitting, to continue the work of the joint working group that will conclude after tomorrow. So just a quick update on where things are going coming out of last month's meeting when we approved the IGA.
Thank you. And really good job on implementing the recommendations from a few years ago. It's not 100%, but it's pretty darn close, and the rest is in the works. And we'll get a lot of that ironed out if and when the Southern Ozaki Fire and EMS Department moves forward. So with that, time for the police chief.
Well, I didn't do wins, losses, and ties, so you're just going to have to bear with me as we go. Sorry. I didn't do wins, losses, or ties, so you'll have to bear with me as we go through the recommendations. But I did like it when we did that. So again, this study was completed back in 2017, and the study identified a list of several recommendations. And so what I did was go through and identify all the recommendations made in the study. Some of them are broken down by patrol, and then some are broken down by administration. So I'll go over the patrol ones first. And some of these are pretty quick. So maintaining a patrol officer staffing level of 22 officers. That is currently what we have assigned to our patrol unit, is 22 officers. Maintaining the existing patrol staffing of 6 sergeants. Again, that is our current staffing level, is 6 sergeants as of right now. The recommendation was to continue deployment of 1 K-9 officer. Currently, we have 2 K-9 officers, as we had an additional K-9 added due to community donations. So that was a significant impact and significant help for the city and for the department. The K-9 that was in place at the time is nearing retirement, so having that transition to this new K-9 was very helpful for us. Maintaining the existing patrol shift schedules. Again, we've maintained those as recommended by the study. So moving on to the supporting services, which is where most of the recommendations came from. Maintaining our authorized staffing of 4 detective positions, and one of them being a training rotational position, which is currently the staffing model that we're using. So right now I have 3 full-time detectives and 1 acting detective. Maintaining 2 specialized drug unit positions. Again, we have that as well. We have a drug unit officer working with Ozark County and another drug unit officer working with the Drug Enforcement Administration. Implement specialized investigative unit performance management approaches. We were able to get this completed in 2 ways. We have now an electronic case management system that was part of our record system that we get from Ozark County. So the ProPhoenix system has a way for us to electronically manage caseloads. And so our patrol captain is now electronically managing the Detective Bureau's caseloads. And we also implemented a employee review process for those detectives as well as the rest of the sworn officers, which we didn't have prior to this. One of the other things that they talked about was creating a supervisor position to oversee the investigative services. So initially, this is one of the things that I brought up back in 2019 when I was first sworn in as chief. Due to budgetary restraints, we weren't able to authorize an additional captain. But because we were able to authorize the IT position, some of the shift responsibilities from the administrative sergeant were relieved. And so I've been shifting some of the duties around. And so actually starting in June of this year, I have the administrative sergeant is going to be assisting the patrol captain with overseeing the detective bureau. So that should help with that workload. Maintain the existing staffing level for the school resource officer. We were able to, again, add an additional school resource officer due to a cost share that we entered into with the Village of Thiensville and the school district. And so now we have 2 SROs, which is working out tremendously in the schools, and we've had a lot of success for that. And we were able to obtain funding from the schools and from Thiensville to help us with that. Maintain 1 dispatch record supervisor position and 7 full-time dispatcher positions. In 2021, last year, I identified an opportunity with a retirement to kind of retweak our dispatch supervision. Again, with that IT person that we were able to hire, the administrative sergeant position was able to oversee the dispatch. And using technology, one of the dispatch supervisor jobs was scoring the emergency medical dispatch calls. We were able to hire a company to do that, to save a person. And so we were able to eliminate the dispatch supervisor position and create an administrative coordinator position, combined it with our administrative assistant position. So we actually eliminated a position last year in the records area, but we've made it more efficient by use of that administrative sergeant position. Develop a qualified pool of part-time dispatch staff. So we did attempt this on 3 different occasions with dispatch, but we were not successful in implementing a dispatch pool position. So we are still relying on our part-time dispatchers to fill in the full-time gaps. Dispatch continues to be a difficult job to staff in today's environment. We're continuing to work through that. In the future, perform an independent, formal, regionalized 911 dispatch feasibility study. They had been doing that simultaneously, but not an independent study with the Matrix study. That was prior to me taking over as chief back in 2017. But now, given the conditions that are taking place with the fire department, that's probably a conversation that we need to take up again. Maintain one administrative sergeant, which we have done. Explore additional opportunities to enhance information technology, which we have definitely done, and that has really allowed us to achieve a lot of these through creative ways to do it. By hiring that IT person, it freed up a lot of my staff's time that were doing IT on the side, so we were able to do some of these other supervisory things that we talked about earlier. Revise the organizational structure, balancing the direct reports between the two captains. Again, I was able to do that when I took over as chief, and we made some adjustments there, so now we have a more balanced approach between the two. Allocate an additional $35,000 to the training budget and facilities. So far, we have not been able to accomplish that with the budget restraints. And increase the records clerk authorized staffing level from 1 to 2 positions. We have not been implemented this as there was not a strong enough need at the time. But as we're going through our accreditation process now, one of the things that we're identifying is some property room potential issues that a property room clerk could assist us with. So we will be exploring that during the coming year. I think that's everything. I didn't add it up though, so I don't have an 11, 3, and 4. Somebody add it up for me.
Your score is pretty close to the fire department. Alderwoman Schneider.
I have a question about the property room, because I know sometimes that's done as a sworn officer function, and I know sometimes now departments are moving toward making that a civilian function, so that, again, the officers, just like the IT person, can be doing what they do best. Is that part of this? Is this now being overseen by a sworn officer?
Yeah, currently the detectives oversee the property room, and that's exactly correct. What you're saying is now it's being recognized that a civilian can do that for less money and more effectively, because it would be one person dedicated to that job. So as we finalize our accreditation, hopefully in the next month or two, they're going to provide information on that topic for us, and then we'll be able to move forward with what we think is the best decision.
Thank you.
Just a quick question.
Sure. Alderman Parrish.
Thanks, Chief. I noticed that your presentation didn't include in your write-up you had that we should consider a needs assessment analysis for the facility. When would you recommend we do that?
As soon as we're able. I think, as we move through the strategic planning process that we all underwent, I think that identified a need probably for us to sit down and think about our facilities. And so I think as we move through that process, maybe we'll have more information. But if you're asking me, I would be happy to do that right now if we could find the funding to figure out how much space we need and how much time we need. I think, it became a little bit more complicated with the fire department merger, but that's something that we're going to be working on and working towards.
Alderman Parrish, I'll just jump in. Staff is scheduled to meet next week with our financial advisor, and as part of a ramp up to the annual budget development process, we will be discussing with our advisors the long-term financial needs of the city relative to capital investment. And so in the wake of the $9 million plus bond issue that we just oversaw back in March of this year, we're going to be revisiting some of the financial projections over the next 5 to 10 to 15 to 20 years, not only from an operational perspective, but a capital perspective. And we would like to have that information ready to present to the council as we kick off the budget process here late second quarter, early third quarter. So to your question with respect to the needs analysis or the needs assessment on a public safety building, we'd like to have some of the numbers tightened up and ready to present so that the council as a whole can begin to make some decisions relative to moving or commencing that process.
And I'll just add the fire chief and I and Captain Riley are going to be attending a facility informational training coming up at the end of this month. So we'll be a little bit better informed and more prepared as we move through this next step.
Any remaining questions from the group? Thank you for the report, Chief. I'll add that the topic of the facility is not unrelated to another study that we've done on our facilities, which I think we'll also be reviewing at some point in the near future, as it's related to capital needs for the city long term. So they all kind of start to interweave at some point. That brings us to future policy items for discussion. If anyone's got any ideas for future topics, that would be a good time to bring them up, or you can email me separately. I would like to note that you probably saw that the staff reports disappeared. They didn't disappear. They're just going to start to be quarterly now instead of monthly. And hopefully we can shuffle the agenda around a little bit so that we'll take up more substantive policy matters not on those nights, so we can dig into those with a little more depth. We've tended to rush through them the last couple of times to make time for the other stuff on the agenda. So we're still going to do them, just not as often. So don't despair, they will return. Any ideas for future topics? If not, we can adjourn and take a couple-minute break before we jump into the next agenda.
Move to adjourn.
Second, there's a motion.
Oh, second.
And a second? Did you second it, Alderman Strelczyk? All right. Motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
You're adjourned. We'll be back in 3 minutes.
Okay. I'll take a quick minute.